Okay, so when you think of an apex predator, what comes to mind? Probably a lion, maybe a great white shark, or a wolf, right? But what about a spider? Now, I know it seems small, but in its own world, it is absolutely at the top of the food chain. And that brings up a really fascinating puzzle. If nothing is hunting them, what stops these little super predators from just multiplying and multiplying until they eat everything in sight and cause their own ecosystem to collapse? Well, we're about to untangle that very mystery, and the answer is all tangled up in a complex web of self-control. Yeah, this is the central question, isn't it? It's this weird paradox where the more successful a predator is, the more danger it's in of literally eating itself out of house and home. So how do they keep it all in balance? Well, the answer isn't just about being the toughest. It's actually a really sophisticated system of self-regulation that's built on family, on society, and a surprisingly complex web of relationships.
So here's our game plan for untangling this. First, we're going to look at the big picture problem that all social predators face. Then we'll zoom right in on a pretty remarkable spider society to see how they manage to both cooperate and compete. And finally, we'll see how those two forces together create a world that's in perfect balance.
All right, part one, the predator's dilemma. To really get these spiders, we first have to understand a problem that faces literally any group that's trying to share something. This brings us to a classic idea called the tragedy of the commons. Just imagine a public pasture that all the farmers in a village can use. Now, if every single farmer tries to maximize their own profit by grazing as many of their own cows as possible, what happens? The pasture gets completely overgrazed, it's destroyed, and pretty soon nobody's cows have anything to eat. The selfish pursuit of what's best for one person ends up being terrible for everyone. Now for a pack of predators, their hunting ground is that shared pasture, and the prey is their shared resource. And this brings up the critical question. What stops one really hungry spider from taking more than its fair share and just ruining the whole system for everybody else? That is the puzzle we're here to solve.
Okay, section 2, a spider society. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to turn to a creature that has a really elegant solution. So let's dive into a fascinating case study involving a communal soup.
Everybody meet Stegodyphus lineatus. These are what you call subsocial spiders. All that means is that the young ones cooperate for a while after they hatch. And their version of cooperation is, pretty unique. They hunt together, they live together, and for their first big meal, they actually eat their own mother. But their most incredible behavior, by far, is how they share prey.
So here's how mealtime works. See, spiders don't chew their food. They digest it externally. They inject these powerful enzymes that basically liquefy an insect from the inside out. It's pretty metal. So when this whole group of spiderlings hunts together, they all pitch in with their enzymes, creating what scientists literally call a communal soup inside the bug's exoskeleton. And this illustrates the problem perfectly. You see, producing those digestive enzymes takes a lot of energy. It's expensive for the spider. So what's to stop a little cheater spider from just waltzing up to the meal, drinking the soup that its brothers and sisters worked so hard to make, and not contributing any enzymes of its own? It's a perfect recipe for the tragedy of the commons. Section 3, cooperating with kin. So how do they stop the freeloaders? Well, it turns out the answer is basically baked right into their DNA. It all comes down to the power of family. To figure this out, scientists had to tackle a classic nature versus nurture question. Are these spiders cooperating because they're actually related, nature? Or is it just because they grew up together and are familiar with each other, nurture? To find out, they designed this really brilliant experiment to pull those two factors apart. Okay, so they created 3 groups. The first was just your standard control group, a bunch of siblings raised together like normal. The third was another control, total strangers, unrelated, never met before. But it's that second group that's so clever. Scientists took eggs from a bunch of different mothers and mixed them all up. So these spiders grew up together from birth. They were totally familiar with each other, but they weren't genetically related at all. They were basically foster siblings. And the results were, whoa, they were staggering. Just look at this chart. It shows how much weight they gained over 8 weeks. The sibling groups on the left, they grew way bigger and faster than the unrelated spiders. And it didn't even matter if those unrelated groups were friends who grew up together. Being actual family made all the difference. So why did they grow so much faster? Well, this chart here reveals the secret. It all came down to feeding efficiency. The sibling groups were able to get way more mass, more of that communal soup, out of their prey. And this is a huge clue that they were cooperating better, that every spider was pitching in its fair share of enzymes.
So let's just break it down. The groups of actual relatives had higher growth, they ate more efficiently, and fewer of them died. The unrelated groups just couldn't keep up, and it didn't matter if they knew each other or not. This is pretty much proof positive. Genetic relatedness is the absolute key. They're not just being nice to their roommates, they're helping their family survive. Part 4. Competition as control. But look, cooperating with your family is only half the story. To avoid eating themselves into oblivion, a society also has to have a way to control its own numbers. And that is where the other side of the coin comes in: competition.
As the ecologist D.H. Morse wrote, when a population gets big and resources get scarce, competition gets fierce. Animals, and that includes these spiders, will fight to push each other out of the best spots. This isn't just random, chaotic aggression. It's a fundamental force that actually shapes their entire world. For these spiders, this conflict shows up in a couple of key ways. They'll fight over the best places to build a web, and when food gets really, really scarce, they will even turn on each other. But here's the real kicker. A previous study found that this cannibalism is not random. It is almost exclusively directed at unrelated spiders. So even in the middle of a conflict, family ties still matter.
Okay, Section 5, a web of relations. So when we put these two powerful forces together, cooperating with your family and competing with strangers, we finally get the complete picture of how you build a perfectly balanced spider society.
It is this truly delicate balance. On one hand, you have cooperation among family members, which totally solves the tragedy of the commons. Everyone chips in to make the meal because they're all helping to pass on their shared genes. Then, on the other hand, you have competition, which acts as a natural cap on the population and stops it from exploding. This whole system of favoring your relatives, it's basically nepotism, is the secret ingredient that lets these apex predators rule their world without completely destroying it.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? These spiders, which a lot of us might just dismiss as creepy crawlies, have this incredibly sophisticated social system that perfectly balances what's good for the individual with what's good for the group. And it just begs the question, what other so-called simple creatures are out there living these complex, hidden social lives that we have yet to even understand? The answers are probably woven into the world all around us, just waiting to be found.